One of the most important founding documents in order to understand the philosophy that's created in the Constitution and why it was set up the way it was is to understand Federalist 10. Basically, after the Constitution was written, there becomes a large argument that's literally through both at the state conventions, but also through newspapers, and in this case, New York, where the anti Federalist voice and the Federalist voices kind of fought it out. And the Federalist Papers are a collection of basically newspaper articles that were written in New York in order to help win New York over. New York was kind of a swing state, if you will, in terms of whether the Constitution would get adopted. And the people that were writing the articles were James Madison, John Jay, and Alexander Hamilton. And they wrote under a pen name. They called themselves Publius. And they wrote these articles in the newspaper. And a lot of it was like back and forth. Like the Anti Federalists would write an article, and then the Federalists would respond to it. And so it's back and forth. So Federalist 10 is like the kind of most famous Federalist paper. And it is like the common paper that everybody reads. If you have a college political course that you have to take, you would read it and study it. I mean, it's a great paper. This was written in 1787. This one in particular was written by James Madison. And you'll notice it says to the people of New York State, the state of New York, you should have a copy of this that you're going to highlight and write in the margins, or you're going to download a document on Google Drive and then go ahead and edit it that way, like I'm going to. So just go ahead and follow along with me, listen carefully, and then take notes as you will. So that way you kind of more fully understand with the ideas behind Federalist 10. And I'm only, of course, doing an excerpt here. This is much longer. You can look up the full version if you want to see it. All right, so Madison starts. Complaints are heard everywhere from our most considerate and virtuous citizens that our governments are too unstable. Hey, looking at you, Rhode Island. Huh. That the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties. Sounds like partisanship was an issue. We don't have that problem in our age, do we? And that measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice and the right of the minor party, but by superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. So he's really talking here. This is that idea we talked about in the last card, which is the tyranny of the majority, where the majority doesn't use power to kind of enact a program that they believe in, but they use the majority in order to silence and wreck the minor party. And so you get like the 51% trying to destroy the rights and the livelihoods of the 49%. Very vicious sort of stuff, very typical of human beings to try to silence people that disagree with them. And we see this in our society today too. On social media, there are often attempts to silence people that you disagree with. And Madison is concerned about that. People are talking about it, and they're hoping to create a constitution that allows people to speak their mind. Hence, I mean, the First Amendment, right? By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse or passion or of interest. Now, we don't usually use the word faction that much anymore, but by faction, it's a group of people who have a common impulse or passion. We would call these interest groups. We call them interest groups, and interest groups are motivated by some common passion. So, what about these factions? There are again two methods of remove. So basically, he's saying factions are bad, and they get a hold of government and they try to destroy the rights or livelihood of the minority group. And I don't mean minority in terms of race or culture. I'm talking about minority just in terms of like you voted for the person who lost. All right, and they destroy the rights of these people. By the way, it could potentially mean race, but in this case, he's talking more general. So he said, like, what can you do? And he says there are two methods of removing the causes of faction. By one, destroying the liberty, which is essential to its existence. So, like, by destroying the liberty, which is essential to, why is it that liberty is why we have faction? And it's because we all choose to be in different groups. Okay, choice, freedom. Um, we associate with like minded people. So when we just have the freedom to like associate with people of a similar religion or a similar belief or whatever it is, similar interest, like whatever it is, we have the choice to do that. What we naturally will join groups. That's what humans do. We naturally associate with a group. All right. And so the one way to get rid of faction is to destroy liberty. Just have no freedom whatsoever. Like we could just become like North Korea and we'll have no problem with factions. No problem at all. All right. Or the other by giving to every citizen the same opinions, the same passions, the same interests. All right. So, like this right here, like, how do you give everybody the same opinion, the same passion, and the same interest? Well, that would be totalitarianism, right? I mean, that's like the Nazis. Like, you will have the same opinion. The communists in the Soviet Union, North Korea again. Like, that's how you do that. Well, they don't want to set up a country that's totalitarian. All right. Obviously, like if you're going to have a free people, you're going to have people with different opinions. And you're going to have to deal with the fact that people have different opinions because the only way to get rid of different opinions and be fully united all the time is to either destroy liberty or give everybody the same opinions through totalitarianism. Like it's going to be bad. All right, let's continue. The latent causes of faction are thus sown in the nature of man. So faction is human nature. We naturally join groups. Like this is just like it's just the reality. We're going to do it. Everyone is going to join group. Now maybe your groups change over time. You may be part of some groups when you're a teen, and then by the time you're in your 20s or 30s, you've entirely switched the type of groups that you're in, and maybe your politics change as well. A zeal for different opinions concerning religion. Now he gets into like what are the things we all join groups on over. A zeal for different opinions, like we really want these opinions, we believe strongly in them, concerning religion, concerning government, and many other points. An attachment to different leaders, ambitiously contending for preeminence and power. It's like, oh my goodness, I love this political leader, and everyone is like thinks the guy like walks on water or something. That can put you in different factions, right? I mean, we see that today. I mean, the passion with which people who like Trump, in the absolute hatred of the people who hate Trump. Like, I mean, that's exactly what he's talking about right here. That sort of like attachment that we get, and we're so passionate about it. We end up hating the other side as a result. So strong is this propensity. Like, look at like Madison is describing today, like literally describing today, isn't he? It's just amazing. He wrote this in 1787. It's like he knew humans pretty well. So strong is this propensity. The most frivolous and fanciful distinctions have been sufficient to kindle their unfriendly passions, excite their most violent conflicts. So frivolous and fanciful distinctions, like small differences lead to hatred and violence. And I'm going to say hatred because he says unfriendly passions. I think that's a really nice way of saying hatred. All right. So he's saying like we are so strongly attached to believing what we believe and joining groups that small problems, even small differences, lead to hatred and violence. Wow. If that isn't our country today, I really I think that's very accurate. Have been sufficient to kindle. All right, good. I'll continue. The inference with which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed. That relief is only sought in the means of controlling its effects. So this is really critical. Can't remove factions, control them only. You only can control them to some extent. So, what is his vision here for controlling these groups where we all end up hating each other because we're in different part of groups? By the way, I might add that if you can believe in something and then not hate the other side, that's kind of nice. That's a society that we might all want to live in. I don't think it's a society we do live in right now, but it's a society that is probably better. I think that's what Madison hopes, right? It may be concluded that by pure democracy, remember that's like participatory where most people are voting, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens where we all kind of know each other, can admit of no cure for the mischiefs of factions. So like small society, you you can't stop factions are going to get into trouble. Why? A common passion or interest will, in almost every case, be felt by the majority of the whole. So, like in a small community, like pretty much everybody thinks the same. That's what he's saying. And there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. So, small community will sacrifice, hurt, weaker or small, or I want to put minority beliefs. You're much more likely in a small community to like ostracize, make fun of, abuse the people who don't believe the same as the majority. And by the way, is this not like high school too? In high school, like that's what people do, right? Like you're the person who's on the out. You don't fit in with the group, the larger group, so therefore you're ostracized, you're abused. We say the same things happen in politics. If you go to a community that's really, really liberal, then they're probably going to kind of abuse the people that are more conservative. And then the flip side is true. If you're in a community that's really, really conservative, then it's much more likely that the people who are liberal and don't think the same are going to be kind of abused and kind of terrorized, if you will, or not treated well. So that's what he says. This is a problem. Hence, it is that such democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention. So small societies, very turbulent, have democracies, I should say, and have ever been found incompatible with personal security of their rights and property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. So, like, he's kind of talking about like the Greek republics or Greek democracies. They short lives. They're going to die a violent death because the majority is going to get control and they're going to go after the minority. And when they do, the minority is probably going to fight back, and that will lead to dictatorship. All right, so that's kind of typical. Now he comes up with his solution. A republic, by which I mean a government in which a scheme of representation takes place, where we elect representatives like Congress people or senators, opens a different prospect and promises the cure for which we are seeking. So this is his solution. The solution representation through a republic. That's going to solve this problem of factions. The two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of the government, in the latter, meaning the republic, to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Secondly, the greater number of citizens, the greater sphere of country over which the latter may be extended. So, like, the country can grow if it's a republic. And Madison obviously saw that as a potential for our country. So, this is a good thing. Like, by a republic, we can have a much larger country. The effect of the first difference is to refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the median of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may discern the true interest of their country. So refine and enlarge the public view. And this means, like, basically a representative is going to take in all these different views from their citizens that have voted for them, and then they're going to talk with other people from around the country who also got different views coming through, and then they're going to create better policy. So they're going to make better policy by hearing lots of ideas. So you're going to end up with better policy because they're going to hear from a lot of people, and they're going to be like, well, I can't do that, can't do this. And then the group of the citizens that are meeting in the Senate, the House, they're going to be able to discern the true interest of the country. So make better policy, better law, basically, by hearing from a lot of people. Under such a regulation, it may well happen that the public voice, pronounced by the representatives of the people, will be more consonant with the public good. Meaning, public good is like the idea that it's a law that's good for everybody, not just for the minority or not just some faction, than if pronounced by the people themselves convened for the purpose. So, like, you're much more likely to have a small group of people who represent the people come up with good law than you have all the people got together and voted on something. That's his argument he's making. All right, so public good comes or public good more likely from representatives than the people themselves. He's kind of he's taking a dig here at democracy. Democracy would be that all of us vote on all the laws, right? And he's saying like, not the greatest thing if we had all the people vote on healthcare policy or a military policy or whatever the policy is you're looking at. He goes, you're actually probably going to get better laws if you have a group of people elected and that small group gets together and through their wisdom comes up with better policy than if we all just vote on everything all the time. So he's kind of shooting down the idea of pure democracy a little bit. The smaller the society, the fewer probably will be the distinct parties and interests composed again. So small society, few factions, right? The fewer the distinct parties and interests, the more frequently will the majority be found of the same party. So in a small group, like your own city you live in, or maybe even a state, more likely that most people kind of believe the same things. You know, California has one kind of set of beliefs, but Idaho a little different. Much more likely to find a smaller community have similar interests. And the smaller the number of individuals composing the majority, and the smaller the compass within which they are placed, the more easily they will concert and execute their plans of oppression. So I love this. He's like, if the smaller the society, the more likely they'll be able to execute oppression. Small groups more likely to destroy others' rights. So the smaller groups in a society, or the smaller society is more likely to destroy others' rights because they can kind of, the majority can easily do that. Extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests, and you make it less probable that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of others. So lots of different ideas all over the place, and you're not going to get people to agree to go violate the rights of somebody else because like kind of everybody belief wise is kind of in a minority group in this larger country. Like no one has a majority view on anything. Everybody has kind of a minority or plurality view. And so they're less likely to invade the rights of other citizens because their view isn't the majority. And they want to protect their rights. The influence of factious leaders may kindle a flame within a particular state, but be unable to spread to the other states. So, like one group might be really, really excited about something, but other states they ignore it. So this idea doesn't spread. That can be a really good thing. The variety of religious sects dispersed over the entire face of it must secure the national councils against the danger from that source. So, more religious groups equals more religious freedom. You're more likely to have religious freedom when you have more religious groups, more religious sects, as he says. All right. And that, by the way, has been true in countries. Like if you have a country with diverse religious groups, you're probably more likely to have tolerance because everybody is religiously is in a minority. Okay, a rage for paper money, for abolition of debts. Looking at you, Rhode Island. For an equal division of property. That's basically communism. I mean, they didn't call it that back then, but that's what he's talking about. Or for any other improper or wicked project. You kind of get some opinions there, don't you? Rage for paper money, abolition of debts, equal division of property, or any other wicked proper project will be less apt to pervade the whole body of the union than a particular member of it. So the belief, bottom line here, the belief is this: if a lot of groups exist, and by having a large republic with a lot of states, you're gonna end up with a lot of groups. Therefore, no one group is going to be able to ruin the rights of other people. So more groups fighting, we call this pluralism. The less likely any one group is going to violate the rights of somebody else. All right, great. We're going to do a card on this specifically, but you got your reading in. Good, thanks.